Welcome to Sipping Tea with Sabrina. In just a second, we'll be sharing the tea on how to keep your 501c3 status, filing your 990. But if you've never met me before, I'm Sabrina, the Dream Team Architect and President and CEO of Building Better Boards. I specialize in building elite leadership teams for corporate and nonprofit boards and CEOs, turning high level potential into extraordinary performance. If you're looking to transform your board or need support working with your board or team, you've come to the right place. Again, I'm Sabrina Walker Hernandez, facilitator for corporate and nonprofit organizations, international keynote speaker, and your go to expert in strategic leadership and governance excellence. I've helped drive 14 million in revenue while building organization resilience, and I'm here to share the insights and strategies that can make a real difference for you and your organization. So let's start. So what I want to say is we have with us today, we have Miss Rolanda Watson coming to the stage. Yay. So
hello, everybody.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
I am doing very well. So I want people to know that this conversation is critical to those wanting to understand how to keep your 501c3 status, filing your 990. So whether you are a nonprofit, mission-driven company, or an association, this is why we have Rolanda with us today. So, Rolanda, share a little bit about yourself and your experience.
Okay, would love to. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Rolanda Watson. I have been working in the tax industry since 1996. So I've been working with individuals, small businesses, and yes, nonprofits as well. In 2018, I started my own practice. I initially was working with my mom, so I'm second generational tax professional. And 2018, I started my own practice just to expand. A little bit after that, I became an enrolled agent. And for those of you who don't really understand what that is, I became credentialed by the IRS, took their tests, went through their stuff to make sure I can help taxpayers with representation, with filing tax returns, everything from your 990s, helping you become exempt, and getting tax strategies to help you. So I'm a well-rounded in the tax industry. I can help people in 50 states, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, girl, we are so excited to have you here because there are troubles in these streets. Like I told you, I have seen people do some wonderful things. So I'm going to get started with the questions, right?
Okay.
So many nonprofits, they really struggle. A lot of nonprofits struggle with maintaining their 501c3 status. So what are the most common pitfalls you've seen and how can organizations avoid them?
Love it. Okay, so a few of the things that I've seen is that nonprofits don't stay with their exempt purpose. When you fill out that 1023 application and you're telling the government what your organization stands for, you want to make sure that you have programs that align with that. If you go off the rear, you're actually putting your organization in perils. Another thing is timely filing that 990. Filing that 990 on time is just like filing your tax return. It is the organization's reporting operation to the Internal Revenue Service. It doesn't matter that you're not paying any taxes. They want to make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing as an exempt organization. Record keeping. Just like business owners, nonprofits, they kind of let the record keeping get away from them, but it's very, very important. It's you making sure that you're not only bringing the donations in you want, but the money that's going out is where you need it to go, and it's set and it measures your business and how your business is flowing. Dealing with record keeping, UBI, unrelated business income, that's a big pitfall for nonprofit organizations. You kind of put all of your fundraising or all of your monies in one basket, but that's not necessarily how it needs to operate. So unrelated business income is something that definitely gets nonprofits in trouble. And the last one that I'll share The last two that I'll share.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is nonprofits that are used for personal gain.
Ooh.
If you, the founder of a nonprofit, find that you're making all the decisions, you don't have a board, you don't have a committee that is holding you accountable and substantiating what you're doing, you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. And the last thing that I'll share is becoming a political advocate that takes over the nonprofit. It's fine to have your opinion. It's fine to have your stance. But if your nonprofit was not designated as a political entity or a political nonprofit, then you put yourself in a big problem when you take a stance and use your nonprofit to promote your political stance.
Girl, in question number one, you lay some nuggets down. I'm going to ask you questions based on question number one. I know that's not here, but you got this because I want you to state it. Okay. Yeah. So one is you said you have to file your 990s based. Here's the deal. A lot of people don't know when they file their 990s. They haven't looked at their bylaws to tell them when their fiscal year is.
Right.
Okay.
So the 990 is due the 15th day of the 5th month of your fiscal year. Now, you have to look at your bylaws to see and pay attention to when you started. If you're a calendar year, and you'll see that based on your bylaws, if you operate on a calendar year, you're due May 15th. If you don't operate on a calendar year, you have to research and look and see when your organization was founded and how it was founded. Those bylaws tell everything about your organization.
I have worked with some organizations and I say, where's your bylaws? And they say, we don't know. And I'm like, oh my God. So that is so critical. The other thing that you said, just in answering question number one, I just want you to restate it because I want the people to hear you. If you get no donations, you still have to file your 990. Is that correct?
Correct. You would file what's called a 990N or a postcard if your donations are $50,000 or less. But yes, you are required to file. It's a reporting. They want to see that you're still operating and you're doing what you said you were going to do.
Thank you. I just wanted the people to hear that coming from an expert, not just, just me.
Right.
Or other people that are saying it. Thank you for saying it. Yes. So filing the 990 can be daunting for smaller nonprofits. Can you walk us through a simplified approach to ensuring accuracy and compliance?
Sure. The first thing I would share is, again, filing it timely. You want to give yourself time, especially if you're a new nonprofit. You want to give yourself time to gather your documents and make sure you're not pressured with what you need to file. Identify what type of filing you need to do. If your income is $50,000 or less, then you would do a 990N. It's not a difficult form, but it is necessary for you to do. If your income is $200,000 or less, or $500,000 in assets, then you would do what's called a regular 990, just a 990, a 990 EZ. Mm-hmm. The regular 990 is if your receipts are 200,000 or more and your assets are 500,000 or more. So sometimes we go in and maybe your income or your donations received is 100,000 and you go for the top 990. You don't have to do that. Go to that 990 EZ, file that form. Sometimes I have people who they know they want to do grants and their income is not 50,000. So I'll tell them, okay, so we'll go ahead and file the regular 990. And the reason why we do that is because they put you into what someone called one program is Guide Star, so that if you are going to apply for grants, your information is seen and they can see the public organization, the public things that you do or the programs that you provide. But if you do the 990N, you won't be able to see those things. Right. So that's something that I would say. First, know what you're going to file. Give yourself time. Right now, we're in March, and if your return is due May 15th, I would start gathering my documents together. You want your articles. You want your bylaws. You want your compensation for your board of directors. You want your board of directors, all of the things that you submitted in your 1023. You want to kind of gather those things together with your current financial statement so that you can cover every section of the 990. Now, I encourage you not to do it all in one sitting if you can. Give yourself a break. Move away from it. Then come back. So that it won't be so daunting, especially if you're not used to doing it. It's not something that you're consistently doing. I would back up from it. Even as a professional with my returns, I come back to them. I give myself a break. I come back because you want to make sure that you're seeing what you need to see and you cover yourself, your organization in the best light so that whoever looks at it says, I want to give them some money. I want to support this organization. But you won't do it if you're overwhelmed. So time yourself, have all of your information together, and provide the best that you can to put your organization in the best light on paper. And that's going to first come with your time management and your confidence in your organization.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I cannot stress the thank you enough. You know, that was a genius idea. I hadn't thought about, even if you were eligible to file the 990 in, go ahead and do the easy so you can get on GuideStar. So that shortens that, not shortens it, but the 5, you know how it says 5 years to get grant ready? That is a step towards getting grant ready.
Right.
That is genius. So thank you for sharing that. So how can nonprofits balance transparency requirements with protecting sensitive information when filing their 990?
Great question. So with some of the information, you don't have to, you can redact some of the information. One of the things I encourage nonprofits to do is to create groups. Let's just say that you have donors or givers that give $2,500, and you call them the Diamond Group. You can create groups or programs, and in those groups, you can put the Diamond Group and the amount that was given. And then if you need to specify, then you can specify those that gave more than that. Now, if you give 5,000, you do have to identify those givers that give over 5,000. But under that, you can, again, use clusters, groups, or programs to identify givers. That will protect your donors. As far as those who receive compensation, we have to identify those who receive compensation, especially if they're on the board or key employees. But you don't have to identify their personal information. You put their title, what they do. And then, of course, you have a professional look over it to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Okay. This is good. So what are some red flags in a 990 that might trigger, an IRS audit, and how can organizations address those proactively?
I think UBI is one of the biggest because the unrelated business income, sometimes we can merge that into the nonprofit organization. And if we're doing something consistently, and if your organization will not exist because of these funds, then you have to really decipher, is it true fundraising or is it an unrelated business income? And that unrelated business income, again, goes on another tax return. That's the 990T.
Okay.
And that we're going to pay taxes on that.
Okay.
But if we just have it as a fundraiser, of course, we're reporting it and we're not paying taxes. I think that's a big audit red flag. Okay. Excessive compensation for the board members.
Yeah.
When your organization, let's just say you bring in $100,000 and the founder is taking $75,000. Yeah.
That's a percentage.
Yeah.
And it's not about how much you're paying them. It's about how much of the revenue they're receiving.
Yes, it is. And you want to do a reasonable comp analysis, even on the nonprofit side. You want to take a look at what all are they doing to receive this compensation. Is it comparable with what's going on in the industry? Right. Is there an outside independent compensation committee that's looking at this? Those things hold you accountable as an organization. So you want to make sure you're paying attention to that. That could be a real thing. Not filing the 990. That's one thing when you get that letter from them saying, we taking this, and it's like, why? You haven't reported or you haven't filed. Here's something that I see. Revenue that are contributions that come to the nonprofit that's solely from one or two people. When a nonprofit is highly funded by an individual, that's a red flag. I would encourage you, even put something on your website to say that we're receiving donations. Send something out to other people to say, contribute to this, so that you're making attempts. You do not want your organization funded by you. That means that you're essentially funneled. Well, you want to.
That's what it means. I get it.
Okay, good. Another thing, this is the last thing I'll share with this, is your program and purpose. I keep coming back to that. When you did your 1023 application, you told the government that this is what my organization stands for, and this is what we'll do. You want to constantly kind of do an internal audit to make sure that your programs are lining up with that initial purpose. Even using some of the same words. This is what we're doing, and this is how this benefits the community, and this is how we are expanding our mission. Because if you go too far off, then the government will then say, okay, so why did you say you wanted to be X and you're operating like Y?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think now in this political climate, that might be even more of an opportunity. And so we got to get this stuff together and make sure that you're in alignment with mission. I got something on the UBI because I'm a true believer. Now I'm throwing a question at you, but you got this. I'm a true believer in social enterprise. And I remember when we went down the social enterprise route, we did a rental company. And but we used the proceeds from the rental company to go back to the nonprofit. So if people are considering, I had someone, here we go. Here's a great example. I had someone say they're going to donate a food truck to us, or what have you, and we don't want to take it because then we have to do some other tax stuff. And I thought, why? You can do a social enterprise and have that help fund your nonprofit. But what's your stance on that? Do I make it seem too simplistic in my head? Talk to me about that a little bit.
So I have a couple of questions with that. Could the nonprofit operate without that social enterprise or doing that social thing? Because when they talk about UBI, they talk about something that's done regularly, and that it is something that the organization then cannot do without. So I would do the typical answer that we have to do with taxes. It depends. You have to look at what it is, how it functions, and does the organization solely is it solely controlled by this social enterprise work?
Right. Yeah, it should be 100% of your revenue. It should be a contributing factor of the revenue.
Yes. That would be key. How much is it providing to? Because you remember, you look at a third.
Right.
How much is it giving into this organization? And that's something that you want to constantly look at, because maybe if we're talking about a food truck and the nonprofit is a food desert nonprofit. It goes into, and I'm just saying, it goes into areas. So that's comparable to the purpose. But how much is that food truck presenting, and is the food truck contributing? Now, so here's something that you can think about. What if that food truck became a different entity? S corp or something like that. A different.
You gotta file that differently.
You file that differently,
right?
But instead of getting in the UBI trap, which could take away your nonprofit, you create a different entity, and then that entity donates those proceeds to the nonprofit.
Interesting. Okay, so there's many ways to do this.
Oh, yeah. And that's where your strategy comes in.
Talk to an advisor like yourself. Talk to a tax professional like yourself
Exactly.
and they'll help you walk through what are the best options.
Right. And that's why it's important to have a clear vision of where the company is going or where the nonprofit is going. When I talk to my clients, I want to understand, what are we doing in 3 years? What are we expecting in 5 years? Because that has a lot to do with how we strategize and plan. Sometimes the UBI just gets us in trouble. If you make $1,000 doing popcorn sales, then we need to file a different return.
Right. Interesting. I'm hoping that people are absorbing this. So I'm learning myself. If you're just joining us, welcome to the broadcast. We're currently talking about how to keep your 501c3 status filing your 990. And we've covered some great stuff. I'm just going to say this, go look at your bylaws. Listen to the part about UBI. Make sure that you are doing what you need to do. Know those red flags that we've talked about. Go back and look at this for yourself. If you are just joining us, it is worth the time. Sometimes you sit and you're like, oh, here's the replay. You don't look at it. Don't do that on this one. This one's going to save you. So here's my next question. For nonprofits operating in multiple states, what are the key considerations for maintaining compliance across different jurisdictions?
Okay. For your state expansion, it's a wonderful thing. But I want you to remember that your 501c3 status is your federal umbrella. Each state operates differently. And I like to say, you want to make sure you have boots on the ground. You want to make sure that someone in that state knows and understands the culture of that state. Do they have registration requirements in that state? Are there state obligations, state tax obligations? I mean, what do they expect for the income tax? What is their filing date? When do you have to have their information in? Do they have property tax exemptions if you decide to get land or property? Do they have property tax exemptions? What is the process for filling that out? Do you have a registered agent? You want to have a registered agent in each state because that says that you have a physical address that things can be sent to. Employment laws. If you decide to hire someone, what are the requirements there? So there's several things you want to think about. Do you have to register as a charitable organization in that state? So each state, expansion is good, but I want to make sure that you do your work before you take the leap so that you can be really prepared. Because now states are much different than the federal. States don't play.
No, they don't.
I live in the state of Texas. We don't file state taxes, but when you look at your franchise taxes, when you look at the employment taxes, and again, we don't file state taxes. I've done taxes for people who file in state taxes. State don't play. So you want to make sure that you're ready. You want to expand, but do it wisely.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I'm in Texas too. And say what you want about Texas is business friendly. So I do appreciate that because I've lived in other states and it can be a process. That's all I'm going to say about that. So if you're in those states, know the process, okay? Even for your not-for-profit business, you need to know the process. As Rolanda said, the state don't play. So let's get it together. So how can nonprofit boards effectively oversee the 990 filing process without getting bogged down in details?
I would suggest a finance committee. If there is a finance committee, and of course you can have your board and that maybe the treasurer handles that, but under the treasurer, they could have a finance committee. You can have one person that says, okay, I'll deal with doing the actual 990. And then you can have someone that says, okay, well, I'll deal with the financial statements. Once those things have come together, we've worked on it over time, not at the last minute, but we've worked on it over time. Then we send it out to an outside professional. someone who does not have any skin in the game. If you notice, I keep talking about that accountability factor.
Yep.
Because if you ever have to answer to any government agency about what you do, you have someone outside of you that could give their stamp of approval. So for the board, you have a finance committee, and if it's just you, if you are new or you are younger and it's just you have your 3 members on your board, then I would suggest that you have that treasurer to do it, and then someone else on the board overlook it. And then whoever's doing your books, your bookkeeper or someone outside, look at it. So you want to have several eyes looking at the same thing to make sure everyone comes up with the same answer. And you're clear about what your answers are on your 990.
Yeah, I'll say this. I add this. Look, I serve on 5 boards, 2 are fundraising boards. I love it. I love it. But one of the boards is newer board. We've been around for like 5 years, right? And so for the first 4 years, we were able to do like the 990 in pretty easy postcard. Girl, that first year when we had to sit down and do that 990 easy, I don't know why they call it easy. The committee, we had several sessions figuring out what the information is. It's very showing if you don't do your accounting right as you go along. And that first year when we did it, we were like, oh, we got to do better so that this is easier next year. And
record, and taking it in phases, the sections, it's like 5 or 6 sections. Taking the sections, take a break. All right, let's meet again. It takes the sections, and there are a lot of questions to answer. But again, if time management, record keeping, and making sure that you're on it, if you do those things, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we did. We had to break it up into several meetings, scratch our head a little bit and say, ooh, next year we got to do better. And I wasn't used to it, because I was used to a larger organization where we just pass it on to the tax professional. Of course, we have to give them information like we've been tracking, but I just pass it on and someone else does it. So that was very eye-opening for me.
Right. So did it make you appreciate that tax professional?
It did. It made me appreciate you tax professionals like yourself. And I'm just in awe of what you are able to do. And I'm hoping that people are listening so that they know, the work that it takes and that's involved in this process. So thank you for that. So with that in mind, what are some cost-effective tools or resources you recommend for small nonprofits to manage their 501c3 compliance?
So first, let's talk about record keeping, because that is something that you should be doing consistently every month so that you're not overwhelmed when it's time to file. There are 3, so let me give you 3 accounting systems that you can use. You can look at QuickBooks, you can look at Wave Accounting, and you can look at Xero. Now, Wave Accounting is something that I do recommend for a smaller or when you're just beginning. And I say that because it is cost effective. It will handle your income and expenses, and it will make sure that you are at least you understand what's going on. Now, customer service, speaking to people, because we are starting off, you need to have someone who's doing it that kind of knows how to maneuver it, or you need to go through the training and build up your skill set in it to understand and know how to maneuver it. But all of those systems you can definitely use. I also recommend like a Google Drive. So that you can keep, as far as we're looking at keeping costs down, a Google Drive, something that I use that is secure. And it's in any industry, but I really use it in the accounting industry. It's something called Verifile. You can send and receive documents and it's secure. I say that because when you're sending out your determination letters, that has your EIN number on it. We have security that we have to be careful of. I'm very leery of just sending things in email unless you have a secured space for your email. So those things will protect your privacy as an organization. And there are several things out there. Oh, let's talk about your donations. When receiving donations, you want to look for a platform or a way to receive donations so that you're keeping up when someone gives you $250 or more.
Yeah.
Because we need to make sure that that's reported into the Internal Revenue Service so that they can receive their deduction and you can have a written document that is provided for them.
Yeah.
So that's something you want to look at. There are a few organizations that a few platforms that you can use for that. I would definitely Google, because there is a lot that you can get depending on where you are, and you want to make sure that the system is providing what you need.
Yeah.
But I do want to say tracking those donations is very, very important. That's one thing at the end of the year you don't want to deal with.
Yeah, you do not want to deal with it. And you know, I know some organizations are just using PayPal or just using Venmo or just using cash. You got to get the system, you know, a good CRM system or and I'll just say a couple of them that I have experience with. You can go look at them, see if they work for your organization. There's QGive by Bloomerang. There's Give Butter. There is Donor Box. There is Jiffy. I mean, they're out there looking for what works for your organization.
Right. And it's going to take some research with that. Because again, every organization is different. All of the needs are different. You may want a text feature. You may want something to automatically email. Those things you need to know what you want for your organization and then do the research for what's going to fit your budget and your need for right now.
That's right. That's right. So how should you talked about unrelated business income, but I want to look not new to me, but maybe I look at it a little bit different. So I'm going to end with this question. How should nonprofits approach unrelated business income to avoid jeopardizing their tax-exempt status?
So when you're starting a new program, are you starting a program and you're saying it's a fundraiser? Look at a few things. How often are we going to do this? Could it possibly bring in over $1,000 within a year's time? And if it does, if the organization heavily operated, our finances have heavily operated with this organization. If that is the case, then I would be on the safe side and do unrelated business income, a 990T. Or I would consider looking at this organization and seeing if it needs to be a separate entity that donates to the nonprofit.
Got it. Like a business, like a separate business that donates to the nonprofit.
Now remember, here we go on the business side. An LLC is a limited liability company.
Right.
It is not a corporation. So it would need to be an entity that's donating. That's what
I'm clouded.
Okay. So if you have a Schedule C, the IRS considers a Schedule C a disregarded entity. Limited liability company is for the benefit of legal purposes. You have your legal protections. So it separates the individual from the business.
Yeah.
But it's not an entity, which makes it a partnership, corporate, S Corp. S Corp is an election, a C Corp or a partnership. So that's just some things to think about. But as you're on that road, you can do that anytime. You just kind of want to strategize and see where is this going. Now, if you want to leave it as a 990T, great. Just make sure you're ready to pay the taxes.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
If you get to that point, call a tax advisor, call Rolanda, because that's what I think that you're going to need. So some things are great. You know, if someone wants to gift I went down this rabbit hole at one point, and maybe this is good. You can tie an example and share. You know how I said we started a rental company, but my real goal is I wanted to start a I wanted to buy a franchise for our nonprofit. We were an after school program.
Okay.
And I was looking into buying like a Ben and Jerry's franchise. And the goal was then I was going to use the franchise, hire the teams because their number one thing that they wanted was jobs.
Right.
And so I wanted to hire the teams that were a part of our after school program to be the employees of the Ben and Jerry, and then use the income from the business as a revenue source for the nonprofit.
It would be contributions that the business is giving to the nonprofit, and it would probably be a C corp. The Ben and Jerry's franchise is going to be a C corp, and the C corp will get actual employee benefits for how they hire, depending on where they are and what the tax law is at the time.
Right.
But then that C corp is donating to a separate entity, which is the nonprofit.
Got it. That makes sense to me now. It all makes sense. Maybe that's why my board was like, slow your roll.
Right.
Let's look at this in a different way. I didn't get my Ben and Jerry's. Let me just say that I'm still kind of bitter about that. We did a rental company, but I think that this has been so eye-opening. I want to check. I'm going to check and see if we have any questions. I know that some people can be overwhelmed by this information because it is a lot of information, and especially if you're new at this, right? It can be a little challenging, but I want to encourage people again that the information that you're providing is so critical for the foundation of your nonprofit, right? Just so you can make sure that you're doing what you need to do so that you stay compliant, so you can continue to service the clients. That's why you got into this business.
Right.
And it is a business, Rolanda. I can't stress that enough. You have so opened the eyes of everyone. Look, I'm gonna pause and see if there's any questions. I got to look across all my platforms here. But if there's no questions, one of the questions I get all the time is about board and fundraising. If you have a question around that, visit my website at www.buildingbetterboards.com, and you can reach out and get information on that. Let me check one more to make sure I don't miss anything. And then what I would like to do while we have this time, and I'm kind of looking here to make sure, looking here, I know what's happening. I know that, I got 2 shares. Okay, so no, I got shares here and great comments. But I know what's happening is people are like, oh crap. Am I doing what I need to do? I don't want to ask a question because, I might be telling on myself. I've been there. I've done that. You have a professional here. I'm going to move on. But if you get the courage to post the question, there is no judgment here. We've all been there before. This is a learning process. And I always say, if you have the expert in the room and you're willing to be vulnerable and ask the question, trust me, other people have that question too. So I'm gonna give it a moment. Here's the thing: what I would like, if people are gathering their courage, and to be able to ask that question, let me ask you this: how can people get in contact with you if they have a question, if they want to work with you? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
The best way is to go to my website. It's mytaxlady.net. mytaxlady.net. On my website, I have a place where you can schedule an appointment and do a 15-minute free discovery call just to kind of hear what you got going on. And with your people, if they put on there that they're from this particular podcast, I'll do it. You can schedule it for 15 minutes, but I'll block out 30 minutes so that we can just kind of talk and deal with whatever your questions and thoughts are. And if we decide to work together in any capacity, that's up to you. But it's your time to just kind of say, this is where I am, and this is where I'm trying to go. Help.
Yes. Be careful, girl, because the questions that be coming up sometimes around 990s and stuff, I'd be like, ooh, Jesus. So, but
Well,
I'm so happy that you offered. It's too late now. You can't retract it. But y'all hear that, right? I'm gonna make sure that we drop the website in the comments across all these platforms. And so, I mean, really, it really is key, a foundational piece that needs to happen. And I'm gonna ask you, are there any final words?
here's what I'll say. First of all, let me share with you. My husband and I started a church in 2002 from the ground up, no help. So I understand the heart of the idea of not knowing what to do, where to do it. Don't lose your passion for the mission and the purpose that you have because of regulations. Regulations will always be there. Pay attention to the details, keep up with what you need to keep up with, and don't do this alone. This community that Sabrina has is wonderful. You have people around you. You have people like myself that don't mind coming in and sharing our wisdom and what we've experienced. Don't take that for granted. Don't do this alone, and don't stop what you're doing, because you and your organization, it matters.
Thank you so very much. And that is Sipping Tea with Sabrina. We will see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.